Wisconsin is a state known for its great beer.
And behind every great beer is great brewing, great people, and great stories.
On this show, we're going to be talking to the people that are responsible for making the beer that we love.
We're here at HopCat in Madison, and this is Behind the Brews.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Hi, I'm Mark Alfred, and as always, I'm with my partner in crime, Fred Swanson. We're standing outside New Glarus Brewery, one of the most successful and founding breweries here in Wisconsin. We're about to go inside and meet Dan and Deb Carey, the powerhouse couple behind the success of this brewery. So let's go. Thank you, Dan and Deb, for having us here today. We really appreciate the opportunity for being here. New Glarus has always been one of the powerhouses of the industry. What do you think as far as the future in the industry itself, or do you see consolidation of breweries down the road?
Well, it's an interesting question, and I think it's funny to me how you've even phrased it, because when we started with used equipment and our 10,000 barrel system, we certainly did not see ourselves as a powerhouse. But 25 years into it, I feel like we're doing okay. And as far as the future of the industry, I see this as very bright, and I'm excited about it. There will always be consolidation. Brewing is a really tough business. And it's hard to get up every day and work hard, and it's hot and sweaty and wet and cold in the winter. However, the big breweries are sort of faltering in their direction. They've had a hard time sustaining their quality. They're losing market share at an increasingly incredible rate every year. So there's lots of space for small brewers to jump in.
What was the thought process behind the Thumbprint series? And is there anything on the horizon that you can tell our audience about?
Well, the craft brewing market, the beer market, is very fragmented. So it used to be in the old days that people would drink one type of beer and that's all they drank their whole life. But now, like in all things related to food, people are interested in new and different experiences. And there is a certain segment of the market that is interested in adventurous beers. So the Thumbprint series allows us to make beers that are maybe not something that you're going to be a #1 beer, but are very unique and adventurous for people that are looking for something that's different.
We just had our brand meeting yesterday, and I think there's 3 brand new beers coming up for 2019.
So Deb, it's really hard to get traction in the business section of a newspaper. It's even more curious when you're in the business section of a large newspaper from no longer doing business in that state. Talk about that moment when on a Sunday in the Chicago Tribune, you're above the fold for pulling out of the state of Illinois. Was that a watershed moment where you thought, oh my gosh, this might be resonating with the public, our new business model?
It's interesting to me to talk to you guys because you have a very different perspective of who we are. Didn't know I was above the fold, did know I made it in the Chicago paper, didn't really care. I was really focused on trying to keep us going financially. And the part that people sometimes miss is the economics of selling beer. And to have to travel to Chicago and take care of wholesalers, it was costly. Like on a personal level, it was exhausting. It took me away from working at the brewery here. It caused us to make additional investments that we really, financially, we didn't know that we could handle it. I mean, we were maybe somewhere around 10,000 barrels. I mean, that's not like actually much above break even. And we're pretty far into the program. So no, I was just like pretty much every day just focused on staying alive.
So now as we've become so local in food and we've become even more local in how we shop for and buy and purchase beers, you look back on the decision that you made long before that even became what we did, and you have to be part of that conversation of drinking local.
Oh yeah, but that happened even before the Chicago issue. I mean, you know, we're not that far from Chicago, so most of our friends that are on the coast are like, why are you not selling beer in Chicago? Like, of course they would be. But for me, I grew up in Wisconsin, and I know that people in Wisconsin are very parochial in their buying habits. I remember going to local apple orchards, going to cheese factories, and I really, believe that thread of interest and integrity in food production still existed in my home state, and that's why we're here.
New Glarus has always been a champion for social causes and improvements of worker conditions. Do you feel that this is part of owner responsibility or an attempt to improve the industry on a whole?
Deb often says that I want this brewery to be here in 300 years. So the way to make that happen is to be strong in the long term. And the way you do that, I mean, enlightened business people know that if you take care of the workers, everything falls into place. And that's crystal clear to us. So we also, when we were first married, I worked and I didn't make a high wage. I had paychecks bounce. And there were times when we would sit at the kitchen table and say, oh shit, do we eat or do we buy antibiotics for our children? So we know, we lived it. We lived in a trailer when we were first married that I think Deb bought for $5,000. I mean, I can't buy a brewery fitting for $5,000 now. So we know in our hearts how working people, especially people who are not making a lot of money, have to make these decisions. So this angst is not, political bullshit for us. It's we know it, we lived it. So it's important, not only as a business person, but also from a moral standpoint, to be a good employer.
So Dan, talk about the emotions that well up in a person when one's wife presents them with a business plan that she has worked on completely, and it's your anniversary, it's your birthday, it's your Christmas present, and then it's laid out in front of you, and it's there, and it's touchable, and you can move it forward. What happens to a person when that is dropped in their lap?
Well,
It wasn't quite that neat.
sounds good though.
Yeah,
But
I like it. It would be good in a movie that way, but it took a long time, and he knew I was working on it, but still.
I would say that obviously there's a sense of deep appreciation and love for Deb. She's a very unique person, and she cares deeply about me, and so she's, as far as I'm concerned, the world's greatest mom and the world's greatest wife. So that's clear. You know, years ago, years before we started the brewery, under the Christmas tree, there was a big package wrapped, and that, when I opened it, it was an old scale, an old balance, like you'd find in a feed store. And I mean, this was like 10 years before we built the brewery. And so I was kind of puzzled why she got me a big feed store balance. And she said, someday I'm going to build you a brewery and you're going to use this. We still use it to this day. We still have it. So I think that's pretty cool. But probably the most immediate feeling was fear, because I'm not an entrepreneur. I'm pessimistic. I'm Irish American, so that means that I'm pessimistic by nature. And the idea of starting a brewery, which is completely competitive, brewing is a nasty business, and you guys, have referred to us as being iconic and successful, but it wasn't always that way. Brewing a business and brewing is a knife fight daily, and it's nasty. So I knew that, and we knew that, because when we talked about doing this, most breweries were going out of business at that time. That was most of our life's experience of breweries closing. So I basically was afraid. I had a good job at Anheuser-Busch, making a good wage, and picking up and just basically moving was kind of a scary thing.
Dan and Deb, thank you for allowing us to be here today. We really appreciate
Yeah,
it.
thank you.
And to all our viewers out there, thanks for watching. And be sure to tune in to isthmus.com/Behind the Brews. And again, we hope you enjoyed our show.
Cheers. Cheers.